You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
Welcome, everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It's Thursday, October 31st, 2024 at 7:35 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And it's Halloween, so happy Halloween. It's also the beginning of the holiday season. Christmas officially starts tomorrow, at least from a marketing perspective. I remember sitting around the family holiday dinner table on Thanksgiving, and everybody complaining that they were starting Christmas marketing the day after Thanksgiving. But that's long since gone. But I did want to talk about holidays approaching and the families gathering and relate that to attachment conditioning and attachment healing in a sense. We have a bias here at Mettagroup, which is really if you can repair fractured family relationships, that you do so, and that the basis for doing this is to actually see clearly the people in your family and to understand what their capacities are. One of the things that happens in family systems that are insecure or disorganized is that a lot of the needs that children have growing up in those family systems are unmet. And there's a continuing friction that happens later in life when we return to the family of origin and look for those needs as they manifest in the current moment, and find again that they're unmet, and then the disharmony that comes from that, particularly when it's aggravated with the long history of that. I suppose we don't talk so much about secure families here. Maybe the why we would is the mystery, but secure families tend to have a good conflict resolution skills, so that if something comes up, there's a way for the individual family members to negotiate it. There's a way for the family to gather around and help with the process of negotiation so that things can be settled. And there's a sense really that the family is this thing of value and that you don't want to risk it unnecessarily, and that it's enduring and carries forward. And it's a not only is it a place to enjoy, but also a refuge. Something goes wrong. And in insecure family systems or disorganized family systems, that often isn't really the sense of it. It's very tenuous. If you get more down toward the disorganized end of things, estrangement is not unusual. And I bring that up at this point in the conversation because in family systems where needs are not met often, and often there's a hapless quality to that. The caregivers love their children. The caregivers intend to provide for them in a way that's useful, and they intend to support and encourage their children. But when those things don't happen, when that's the intention, well, all of the things that I say about coming together and attempting to repair it and to see what it is that you can actually find useful and meaningful in the family system does not apply when the caregivers intended to harm their children, which is a different kettle of fish, and something that happens. My mind just tweaked that I used accent of kettle of fish, so I'm going to hear about that from the vegan community. Apologies. A bowl of cherries. Um, sometimes, and Dan Brown used to say that about 11% of people who experience trauma in their family systems, it's intentional. And that's a whole different world of intentional harm. And I just want to be really clear that none of the things that I say about gathering together and attempting to repair and seeing the value of the family systems and gathering that up applies to that group of people where there was intentional harm. Christian?
George, I'm curious, and you've worked with a lot of people, if you've actually ever seen a family with that level of dysfunction and abuse that was like able to kind of sort itself out.
Um, it's a good question. Let me think if I can answer it. I have seen a ongoing relationship with uh, siblings and other family members who were not intentionally harming, and often with the one, if it was only one caregiver in the family system that was intentionally harming, a relationship that is repairable with the other one, even if the other one didn't intervene, unless uh, the the caregiver chose not to intervene when they had the opportunity to. But often not, say more often. You know, it's one thing to have to be on the receiving end of not good enough care. That's a fairly ordinary experience. I mean, you know, imagine being a parent and meeting your child's needs 100% of the time. It's unimaginable. But actually, security, it's only 30% of the time that you have to meet that bar. So it is an astonishingly low bar, which many people are able to do. Of course, when you think about it, you have an 85% chance of inheriting from your primary caregiver the attachment strategy that they use. And so secure family systems tend to produce secure family members who then go on to produce more secure family members. And because secure people do better in the world, you tend to come from more resourced family systems. And more resourced family systems have a better chance at meeting the needs of children than family systems where there isn't resource. Obviously, we're in a larger cultural container, and certain societies within our culture are advantaged over other societies. If you're born into an African American family, you know, your family makes 51 cents on the dollar to your similar European descended Caucasian family. You're in a family system that's headed by a female instead of a male. You know, females make 74% of what their male counterparts make for similar same work. So all things being unequal in our culture, depending on that sort of genetic lottery, From the Buddhist perspective, of course, we're just talking about basic karma, uh, but that one's harder for me to wrap my head around. But if you have good enough care, 30% of the time or better, and you have enough resources so that there's not anxiety about, the basics, uh, food, shelter, clothing, medicine. If you have caregivers who are interested in you and what you find interesting and what you're good at, and they're supportive and encouraging of that, you go on into a life, come from that very early nugget of security. You go into the mid childhood experience where you're educated and you learn about the things that our culture values and uh, basic skills. And then maybe you even have enough privilege and enough freedom to actually direct yourself into the things that matter to you. This isn't obviously universal. And then you can follow that path of exploration in the way that you need to. And that you have a family system that's interested enough in you that they'd like to stay in touch with you. They like reports on the things that you're doing, and you are interested enough in them and you like reports on what they're doing, so that there's a synergy that connects and keeps the family together in that way. And generationally, if you have siblings, um, and there's an involvement with siblings, and it's not unusual for people to then move out of that core nuclear family and then to begin a family, uh, each of their own, and then the generations interacting in that way. In insecure family systems, you learn the system of attachment that the family system offers you, and then it compounds often the difficulties of managing that whole description that I just gave in different ways, and uh, managing relationships, managing the ability to gather resources so that you can pursue a primary exploration. I think that one of the things that's so unusual about the time that we live in is that we actually have this attachment theory framework, which is new. Uh, this is the mid 80s, the mid 1980s that we're talking about in terms of the presentation of this. And really, in terms of attachment interventions, we're really in the first 10 years of meaningful attachment interventions. And so that this whole conversation about how we might change that early attachment conditioning and move in a direction that actually is more beneficial for us. And if we undertake doing that, then we're going to interact with our family systems. Maybe other people in the family systems are undertaking it, maybe they're not, but that won't matter so much as you undertaking your attachment repair and then showing up at the family system no longer really fitting into the system the way that it was, and actually no longer willing to participate in the same way that you participated before, which is going to change the entire dynamic of the family. And hopefully they just don't kick you out for disrupting things, which I think is one of the things that happens. And then the dialogue that you begin to have, perhaps you have with other members of the family. One of the things about attachment theory, which you probably know for yourself, is it's mind blowing, and it's the easy mind blow. It's not even that hard to get into the conversation and have these aha moments of insight, and then to actually, without that much effort, see the advantage of undertaking what you have to do to shift things. in secure family systems, of course, they're intimate, and so that they're actually interested in you. And in secure family systems, it's more role-based. And then you may be able to examine what role assignment you had in the family system and how central to the operation of the family dynamic you inhabiting that role. And maybe as you recognize it and you're no longer willing to do it, the whole dynamic of the family changing. Of course, if you have a coveted role in the family, everybody's lining up to get the role from you. They're very happy to do it. But if you have a disadvantaged role, let's say you're the scapegoat in the family system, nobody wants that role. It's going to be a lot of pressure on you to keep it. So that the balance of the family can be maintained, and then you won't, and you'll step back from that, and the family will have to reorganize in a way that keeps the balance going. And how welcome will you be in that role of disruptor of the balance that has been precariously held for so long? But one of the things that does often come up is this sense of what it was that you needed, you, that unique person that you were growing up in the world that you found yourself in, and what were they able to do for you, and what were they not able to do for you, and what was the cost of that to you in having to go without the family system being able to meet those needs. Um, and I alluded to this earlier on, but what often happens is in family systems where the resources aren't available to meet those needs, the needs go unmet, which creates in us an expectation that needs will be unmet, that there isn't a way to get those needs met, and depending on how the you were responded to in your insistence on having those needs met. Some people grow up and they believe that they're needy, and that they're demanding, and that actually they're so needy, in fact, that presenting needs to people will actually push people away from them. But if you put this into perspective, you're an infant and you're making outrageous demands on your caregiver for attention and care, which they're unable to provide for you. And you are shamed into this idea that your infant needs are outrageous. Can you put that together? Yes, it's totally possible for a caregiver or several caregivers to be overwhelmed by the needs of a child. But to imagine that a child could come up with outrageous demands that were completely uncalled for is also a stretch of imagination. Or simply there weren't resources and you weren't cared for. Neglect is also something that happens quite often. So neglect. What we really talk about in attachment, the development of secure functioning, is these pieces of was the family loving? Did they provide the care that you needed? Were they neglecting? Were they rejecting? Were they involving in your mind states, or requiring you to be involved in the caregiver's mind states? So part of this healing process is to really recognize that for the most parts, the needs that you had as children that your caregivers were unable to meet was the responsibility of the caregivers, and they didn't meet them, not that your demands were outrageous. And to touch into the terrible sadness of that those needs were not met, but to change your relationship to them so that you don't understand that those needs are unmeetable. What that does to us in the present moment, of course, is when those needs arise, or the needs that are like them in the present moment that attach that memory thread to them, we don't make an attempt to get those needs met because we don't believe that it's possible. And that keeps us in a state of deprivation. And then when we return to the family system, and those needs arise there, and the family system can't meet them, it creates this anger that we often experience, or the despair in engaging in the family system. And I think that a reframing of these needs is that for people who could meet those needs, they're not outrageous. They're just the needs that you have in this unique experience of who you are. And that actually, in certain circumstances, they can even be a source of delight in the relationship. But you still may find that in returning to the family system, that they're unable to do it. They've never really been able to do it, and they're still not able to do it. And so the idea then is to see them clearly for the capacities that they have and the capacities that they don't have, and to receive the things from them that they do have to offer you, and to take the things that they can't do for you and go to other people who can meet those needs. Because often what happens is the things that they can do for you are poisoned by the things that they can't do for you. And the ongoing state of deprivation that you've carried with you interferes with valuing the things that they can do. And because we don't then turn away from the original family system to other people and connect there and to have those needs met in another place, the deprivation amplifies the sense of distress. Most of the time, I think that the reason that they couldn't meet their needs is because they couldn't do it, not because they could do it and they withheld it from you. Let's see here. So the question in chat is, what are the different types of needs which show up in adults? Well, physical proximity is one, affection is one, a sense of valuing, a sense of safety, a sense of reliability and being able to keep agreements in the relationship if there's conflict and it arises, the sense that you could negotiate the conflict and find a settlement to it, and not threaten the relationship particularly. In insecure and disorganized relationships, the threat to the relationship if something doesn't go the way that you need it to is almost always on the table, whereas in secure relational dynamics, the relationship is not threatened because there's such a confidence in the ability of the people to negotiate a solution that will work. Is that making sense? If you grow up in a family system where there's no reliable means of conflict negotiation and there's an imbalance of power between the people that manage the household, then you don't grow up with a sense of confidence that conflicts can be resolved. You grow up in a sense that the world is unfair and you're disadvantaged because you're so powerless. And there's a few ways that people address that. One is to try and gather as much power as you can so that you're in the power position. And another one is simply to acquiesce uh, uh, passively to the power imposition until you just can't do it anymore, and everything blows up and you depart. You huff, depart from the relationship. And if you grow up in a family system where those kinds of power imbalances are ongoing, you really don't rely on it, on the relationship. You develop a sense of independence, a hyper independence, really, where you always have an exit strategy. Make sense? So going home, Adam.
Thanks, George. What is the delineation between, I forget the word you use now, but non-intentional abuse versus intentional abuse, or diabolical? I can't remember the word.
Hapless versus sadistic.
Hapless versus sadistic. For example, my father had a hell of a temper, and I imagine there's a difference between being so pissed off. Sometimes getting angry at your kids just feels good or a relief versus the sadistic abuse that you're talking about. Yes.
Say that again.
I'm just trying to determine. Yeah, sadistic abuse
So then,
between hapless abuse.
So you lose your temper.
Uh-huh.
And in losing your temper, you don't inhibit yourself and you strike out and physically harm your child.
Uh-huh.
And then as soon as the wave of anger passes, you're completely filled with remorse and you apologize and you attempt to repair it and attend to the needs of the child as best that you can. I would put that in the hapless category. You completely lose your temper. You feel a sense of injustice in the world, and you're going to take it out on your kid so that you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
That would be sadistic.
Okay.
But the outside appearance would look much the same. And then there
Wow.
would be a gaslighting experience for the child rather than a sense of remorse, which is you brought this on yourself, you deserved it. It was had you not acted in the way that you acted, this wouldn't have happened. That's the kind of gaslighting that accompanies sadistic abuse. Now, you may
Got it.
find that the caregiver who loses their temper while genuinely remorseful does not solve the problem of their temper. And even though it remains in the hapless category, it's in the end is still destructive
Mm-hmm.
to the relationship, but not the same. There's a sense of betrayal in the caregiver who doesn't resolve their own problems, but it's not the same, doesn't have the same corrosive effect as the betrayal of the caregiver who lays in wait
Mm-hmm.
to cause harm.
Thank you.
So, and I think that it's easier to overcome the hapless
Mm-hmm.
abuse by seeing clearly the caregiver, whereas the other is not solvable, really.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the other things about sadistic abuse is that often the attempt to repair it is just another opportunity to be sadistic. And so there's no safety even really in attempting to repair it. And so often it makes the estrangement that accompanies that kind of abuse is often necessary rather than preferable. That makes sense.
Yes, it
So that
does.
you can protect yourself from further harm. But let's say it was hapless for the sake of this conversation, because the other is another category. Um, so you attempt to see them clearly so that you can see what they really had to offer. And what we're attempting to discover is that the reason that they denied you the care that you needed as a child was not about you. It was really about them. And it wasn't even about volition in the sense that had they had it to give you, they probably would have. But it's really to be able to see that they didn't have it to give you. And the experience of not actually having it to give you was in some way so painful for them that they couldn't acknowledge that part. And so they often led you to believe that you that if you had behaved in a way or in a different way that they might have provided for you. But those are all protections, I think, for themselves rather than for us. And to see them and to really understand what the chances were that they could have done for you the things that you needed when they didn't. And to take that in, that the main reason that they didn't do it is they didn't have it to give you. So they couldn't have given it to you, even if you had performed in a way that they might have claimed you should have. Even if you were the person that they said that you should be. I mean, often what we find is that we're asked to be somebody that we're not. And we're also not so able to do that. It's one of the reasons why it feels compelling to us that that we are actually responsible. And also the preserving of the good child, the good parent, bad child, or the good caregiver, bad child. It's actually less anxiety producing for a child to think that if they were able to do something differently, that they would be able to have the care that they needed rather than a caregiver not being capable. And so we look at the caregiver in this sort of idealized way of them being capable and the fault being our own as to why they don't meet our needs when actually it isn't like that. And so the corrective piece, as hard as that may sound, is to see them the way that they are and to see their capacities the way that they are and to understand that they love us and that their intention for us is most of the time good, but they're not able. So we don't feel such disappointment that the things that they are able to offer to us, uh, we don't accept because of that anger or that bitterness that sometimes accompanies it. And we're able to then connect with them and to accept from them as expressions of love these things that they are able to offer, even if the bulk of our needs to be addressed by someone else in a different context. Is that making sense? And then we have the opportunity to connect. We have the opportunity to be with them. We have the opportunity to appreciate them and what they want to offer to us. And we can find in that a sense of being loved by them. You know, we grow up in this human condition. And part of this human condition is that we're brought up by people. You know, we come into the world, we can't even roll over. We can't sit up. We're entirely dependent on somebody taking care of us. And the working model of ourselves, we develop based on the response of the caregiver. And if the caregiver isn't so good at taking care of us, the working model we develop of ourselves is not based on we express our needs and somebody meets them. Imagine going through the world like that. I have a need. Somebody will help me. I'll just express it. And the world will respond by meeting my needs. Um, where, you know, if we as human babies don't think somebody's going to take care of us, we fail to thrive. Even we shut down and just die. It's that deep. And so, at whatever point in life that we can see clearly who our caregivers were and see what capacities that they had then, and the capacities that they have now, and to find in that the way in which they're capable of expressing love and then being able to experience it as loving is valuable to us. It really can go a long way to repair some of these difficult working models that we develop. But this in no way suggests that you should return to an abusive relationship, and in no way suggests that you should be overcome by afflictive guilt. And you know, in Buddhism, we talk about emotions as neutral and the relationship to the emotion as beneficial or afflictive. And guilt is one of those emotions that arises. And in a beneficial experience of it, it propels us to perform the functions that we're supposed to. And in an afflictive sense, it compels us to perform things that we're not actually supposed to be doing. So we do want still this sense of freedom where we can engage or not engage, and we're not compelled by an afflictive experience. This is also true, of course, with siblings if you have them. Um, in in a lot of households, the sibling relationships are conflicted and difficult sometimes, and to be able to see often that some of the behaviors that happen were part of this process of the family system balancing itself, and the delivery of messages, caregivers, and all sorts of involvements that may have precluded a bond, a sibling bond from forming. Of course, some sibling groups gather up and form very tight bonds as a way of relating in the family system, but it's often that there's a separation that happens between them. Contact is difficult. If there's a way there to open a dialogue, particularly. As you begin to address your own patterns of attachment conditioning and move from this insecure, say, dismissing attachment, or helplessly preoccupied or even disorganized into more secure functioning. Often there's an opportunity to repair that as well. So I think that it's really mainly this process of being able to see clearly what happened to you, what effect it had on you, and how that led to a cascade of decisions that you made to end up where you are, and that also unfolded for the other members of the family, and to begin to see clearly who they are, understand what you need from them, and then to understand their capacities, whether they could or could not manage that for you. And then allow an exchange of care in a frame that's actually representative of people's capacities, and then the things that you aren't able to get met in that frame, take those out into the world and fill them with other people. So it's very different to return to the family scene with your needs largely met by the community that you've put around yourself, so that you're not reactive to these deprivations that can arise, so that you're then free to engage more with what happens, with who people are. How did you end up in the family you ended up in? These are deeper questions. What do you say we do some loving kindness practice? So go ahead and settle into your meditation posture. We'll do some loving kindness for self and also for. All right, let go of the meditation. So we have Adam.
Thanks. Just it's always hit or miss. I mean, all these are. And particularly with any kind of metta practice. I know you've mentioned in the past, you just in a way have to be relentless. But there seems to be this line of frustration. In other words, I'll try to be relentless, but then that just turns into me getting pissed off or
Anger being the
frustrated.
far enemy of loving kindness.
Yeah. Yeah, I just I can't seem to cultivate this idea of being relentless without that coming up.
Can you find the mind state?
Yeah, sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. One of the things that seemed to work this time was keeping my eyes open and just repeating it out loud over and over and over. Just basically doing whatever I possibly could to prevent anything else from coming into my mind. Visually, for me, closing my eyes, because I'm so visual, seems to be not the right route for me, because I will or maybe it's just a lack of concentration. I don't know. It's so easy for me to get pulled off track visually with my eyes closed. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
Can you hold a still image?
In my mind, no.
Okay. So that would be a concentration object for that. See if you can hold a still image. So remembering a photograph or something like that often can be helpful.
Yeah, so what I've done in the past, I actually did it this time too, was I will literally hold a photograph and I will look at it with my eyes open.
Good.
And I mean, that's just what it seems to take sometimes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool.
Why is that a problem?
I don't know. Because there's that voice that says I'm doing it wrong. So I needed to.
So the response to that voice is always, thank you so much for sharing. Now go stand in the corner and look at the wall.
And go fuck yourself. Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Someone else? Good. So we have a workshop in November coming up on how to go home for the holidays, which is actually the topic that I just talked about. But we'll do some meditation and some IPF around that, so that we can ideal parent figure, so we can go a little bit deeper into that. And then fast upon us is the end of the year, so get ready to enjoy that. I do offer the teaching freely, but I do hope that if you're a resource and can make a donation, you'll consider it. There's links on the website for making a donation. Oops, I realize I'm supposed to put one in the drop box. Let's see here. And then if I have it, here it is. Oops, I mean in the chat. And then I hope to see you somewhere on the path. See you later. Bye.